There's a fishy. Don't know what happened there. It flickered on me. This is one of the best photographers in the whole wide world right there. Right there. Look at his head. It's getting bigger and bigger. Look at it swelling. Yes, we have fishy swimming out of water here in Seattle talking about the tar sand. We're downtown City Hall right now. I'll carry seaweed. If there's an extra sound, I'll take a sign or something too. I'll always do that. Downtown City Hall in Seattle, so if you're near the area and you want to come down and you like the oceans and the water the way it is, and you like fish and dolphins and salmon and other animals that exist all over.
Can you take it? Thank you. So what is it?
He wanted to. Yeah, he wants you to record all.
Yeah. Or you can do it wherever you think it's good. Still have a backdrop.
When we start, if I can just be next to him, it would be great. When we get there, good.
I totally understand that.
Good.
After this dog.
Yeah, right.
Cool. She's on the other side of you.
Okay.
How does technology work? So,
Here in Seattle, downtown.
So I want to thank everybody for coming out today. It's a beautiful day, so good luck for that. My name's Adam. I'm an organizer with Forest Ethics based up in Bellingham. We've been working on a campaign against the tar sands for the last 3 years. And I got to say that it's not been for the last 3 years we've been able to get a crowd like this out for an anniversary of the Kalamazoo spill, an event happening around the country. So thank you guys closer. Thank you guys so much for coming out. I just want to say a couple words about why we're here, and then I'm going to pass it over to the speakers. So we're here, as you all probably know, to commemorate the 2nd anniversary of the Kalamazoo River tar sand spill. That spill in Kalamazoo, Michigan, was the costliest onshore pipeline disaster in U.S. history. In fact, 2 years later, and hundreds of millions of dollars in cleanup later, parts of the Kalamazoo River are still closed to the public because oil still sits at the bottom of them. And the reason that spill was so costly, because tar sands, chemicals, we're not saying oil, because tar sands chemicals are actually fundamentally different from oil, and that's why that spill was so costly. We're running through that pipeline. And those same chemicals are being processed in refineries here in Washington, are running through pipelines in Washington State, and every week are traveling through tankers on Puget Sound. So Kalamazoo spill is a warning to us here in Washington and in the Pacific Northwest that we need to wake up to the threat of tar sands in our sound. So I'm really happy that all of you have come out today to echo that warning and to show some of the folks that we've been working with up here in City Hall that we really need to take action on this right now. So that's just the other reason that we're here is, which is really awesome, is we've been working with a number of councilors in City Hall to get the city of Seattle to join 17 municipalities in British Columbia, the city of Bellingham, and 16 major U.S. companies that have already taken public action against the tar sands and saying we don't want extreme fuels like tar sands in our fleet. So we're here to support those councilors. One of them might come down later today in a couple minutes and say a couple words, which would be awesome. But really appreciate, this is the first action in that campaign. Appreciate y'all coming out for that. And then just the last thing I'm going to say before I pass it over is that there are 30 actions happening today around the country, from the East Coast, from Burlington, Vermont, all the way over to Texas, to Nebraska, here in Seattle. So we're standing together with hundreds of other people. We're not alone in this fight, and we're going to make sure that we keep no more tar sands out of the U.S. So I just want to kick it off with a little chant. This is an easy one. I think you all have heard of this. Just when I say no, you say tar sands. No.
Tar sand.
No.
Tar sand.
No.
Tar
When
sand.
I say no, you say pipeline. No.
Pipeline.
No.
Pipeline.
No.
Pipeline.
When I say no, you say tankers. No.
Tankers.
No.
Tankers.
No.
Tankers.
Cool. So this is a little bit more complicated one. It's my favorite. So this is one you can dance to if you want to. So it says just no tar sand pipelines, no tankers on our coastline. No tar sand pipelines, no tankers on our coastline. No tar sand pipelines, no tankers on our coastline. Woo! So we have 3 short speakers, and then we're going to set up a visual for photos. It should take about 30 minutes, so thank y'all for coming. And the first speaker is going to be Emily Johnson. Emily is a Seattle-based writer and activist, and in 2011, last year, she was part of the Tar Sands Action sit-ins where 1,200 people were arrested in front of the White House to block the Keystone XL.
Did they have a jail big enough?
We're here in Seattle, having a Tar
Right, I'm not as
Sands
good at it as Adam is,
Kalamazoo's anniversary.
Yeah. There we go. All right. 2 years ago today, 1 million gallons of tar sands poisoned the Kalamazoo River. The result of corroded pipelines that the company involved had 5 years of warning about. Such an accident would devastate the Puget Sound, and Fred Bellman will be talking about that in a minute, because tar sands are already entering the Sound every week by pipelines, trains, and tankers. But even without a spill ever occurring, use of tar sands is a choice that could haunt us for centuries. If we are optimistic and imaginative people, we might believe that unprecedented profits aren't blinding the companies involved to the environmental risks. If we are extremely optimistic and imaginative, we might believe that everyone, at every step along the line, every executive willing to slow down when caution requires it, every welder working on every rivet, is concerned, attentive, and confident at every moment. If we are also callous and entitled, we might believe that our need for oil is more important than the health of the human communities nearby and the existence of the boreal forest and its denizens. But even if all of these things were true, it would not be enough, because the biggest problem with tar sands, like Arctic drilling, or fracking, or sending mountains of coal from Montana to China, is that we're turning up the heat on our use of fossil fuels at exactly the moment when we need to use all of our ingenuity to dial it back. The companies involved in these efforts seem to view this moment as their last great chance to treat the Earth as their private ATM and to drain it of every last drop before the dangers of climate change are obvious enough that we finally respond. Just last month, a prestigious group of international scientists, led by Berkeley's Anthony Barnosky, published a paper in Nature that warned that we are fast approaching the feared tipping points that will radically shift the Earth's biology, possibly irrevocably. The data suggests that there will be severe impacts on much of what we depend on to sustain our quality of life, Barnosky says, including, for example, fisheries, agriculture, forest products, and clean water. This could happen within just a few generations. We had advance warning of this in the key message of the 2009 Copenhagen Climate Science Congress, which stated, "Recent observations confirm that the worst-case IPCC scenarios are being realized. There is significant risk of abrupt or irreversible climate shifts." To be clear, these studies don't pertain just to orcas or polar bears or even to entire boreal forests, though every one of these is well worth saving. The studies pertain to whether the planet will be livable for our descendants even just until the end of this century. In response to this terrible knowledge, all over the country and the world, people have stood up to say, no more. Many of them willing to be activists for the first time, many of them living in places that are immediately at risk. My own personal tipping point came with the craziness of the Keystone XL pipeline. So when Tar Sands Action put out the call for people to come to D.C. and get arrested, I couldn't stand on the sidelines any longer. Along with the people who have worked hard for decades, we're all doing this because we have to. Our leaders have failed us, big oil has become ever more rapacious, and we have failed to hold either them or ourselves accountable. We here in the U.S. have done more than anyone else to cause this problem, and we are not pulling our weight in solving it. This is not because we're bad people, it's because the scope of the problem is nearly beyond imagining, and we were born into a place and time in which normal life in our communities meant that we had to take part in this destruction to one degree or another. Writer and activist Bill McKibben has pointed out, as long as this remains one abstract problem in the long list of problems, we'll never get to it. There will always be something going on each day that's more important. But in reality, climate change is the biggest thing that's going on every single day. If we could only see that pattern, we'd have a fighting chance. We are here today because we see the pattern. Tar sands, Arctic drilling, coal trains. Unfortunately, there are many local battles to fight on these issues. And it doesn't really matter which ones any of us focuses on. What matters is that we focus, and focus now. We have to support the politicians who have the foresight to take action on climate change, like the Seattle City Councilors who are working on the tar sands resolution. We have to pressure them to be leaders. We have to hold companies accountable when they spread misinformation and take environmental shortcuts. And perhaps above all, we have to conserve and talk about conservation and help the world place a higher value on the health of its communities than on the newest shiny things and the habits we've grown accustomed to. We are at the cusp of history, and something extraordinary is required of us. We cannot entrust our future to companies that have repeatedly proven their willingness to plunder, lie, and buy our politicians while assuring us that they are simply providing what we need. We will fight extreme energy choices here in Seattle, in Washington State, and in the country as a whole, in every way that we can. We will look forward and not back. There's too much at stake, and the world is too precious for us not to. Thank you.
Thank you.
So there's been a lot of talk, and I think a lot of you are here because of the energy, the amazing energy that's been built around the fight against the Keystone XL pipeline. Got a couple folks here that were arrested in D.C. last year, part of that fight, and I think it's amazing how that fight has brought people together and out in the streets on this issue. One thing that's been overlooked, and I'm really glad that we're here, is that while that fight has been raging on, Big Oil is trying to find every back door they can to get tar sands into the U.S. and out to Asian markets. And one of those back doors is Puget Sound. So I'd like to bring Fred Fellman up to speak a little bit about that.
I've heard about waving your freak flag high. This is my waving my kelp high. All right. Well, so I've been working on oil spill issues for some 20-some years, and we haven't yet to find a oil quite as nasty as tar sand oil.
Hold it to your face. Hang on.
Up to 11. All right. All right. So tar sand oil is not like any oil, as you heard Adam mention. It's bitumen. So bitumen is this like coal tar that's in the ground that has to be separated, as all you guys know. But in order for it to flow, it has to be diluted. And so when you dilute bitumen, you produce a product called dilbit. Isn't that nice sounding? I think you have to be a dimwit to allow dilbit in Puget Sound. Now, quite frankly, the problem is that it's already there. And the fact is, while the fights are going on with Kitimat and with Keystone, we've already had Puget Sound connected to the tar sands since the beginning of our refineries. In fact, our refineries are in the backwaters of Puget Sound because they were connected by pipeline. That was the original source of our oil, was Canada. The docks were just for exporting the refined product and for polluting. So that they have the outfall pipes there. So now we have the shoes on the other foot. Canada now wants to export their Midwest product, and heading through the Straits of Juan de Fuca. The numbers that we're talking about here, currently a tanker or two a week of crude is occurring from what we currently have. But from just the past 5 years, we've had an 8-fold increase in the amount of oil coming through the Vancouver terminal at Burnaby. So this is a very short period of time for an 8-fold increase, up to over 80,000 barrels a day. Now, it's 42 gallons per barrel, so you do the math. But the fact is, that pipeline is currently capacity at 350,000 barrels a day. Some of it goes to our Puget Sound refineries, and some goes for export. They want to double that to over 750,000 barrels a day. Vapors will be borne off, and then the oil sinks because it's heavier than water. So you get in there fast, you get yourself cancer. You get in there slow, you have a spill on the bottom. Now the Kalamazoo spill was, relatively easy. It's a shallow river, but in fact, it's 2 years later. They've been able to bring backhoes to dig it up. There's no backhoe that can dig in Puget Sound. It's a little too deep for that, right? So if you like your crab, if you like your whale, you should not like anything that these guys are talking about. Unfortunately, because this is a Canadian project, the leverage that us as Washingtonians have is limited. However, and then also, Mr. Harper just gutted the environmental laws of Canada for the most part. Their Environmental Impact Review and the Fisheries Act are all now casualties of this rush to get China their oil. And really, I say China because China invested billions of dollars into those tar sand fields. So it's not a matter of question of where does that oil want to go. Obviously, Puget Sound is the fastest route to China from the options that they currently have. They ultimately want to do that Kitimat run, but in the meantime, we have the exposure. We have to let our public know that this is already unacceptable. Doubling that is almost unheard of. I need you guys to stay in tune. We will have opportunities in the near future where Canada and the United States Coast Guards are going to have dialogues about how safe are our waterways on either side of the border. This will be the forum that will give Washingtonians a hand in that discussion. So let's wave our kelp flags high and stay tuned. Thanks for your attention.